Hello, I'm Shantz, Assistant Director for Class Year and Discernment Programs. Today we're going to talk about the beginning of our discernment process, how to live wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedness is a term that is hard to define. The challenge is wholeheartedness is as much a process as it is an outcome. It is both the place where we must begin our search for vocation and evidence of vocation itself, or a life lived in one's divine truth. Let's talk a little bit about what it looks like to live wholeheartedly. Researcher storyteller Dr. Brene Brown tells us that to live with our whole hearts means to act with self-compassion, to live openly and authentically, to practice vulnerability, to work with purpose, to rise in the face of setbacks and uncertainty, create beyond the limits of convention and history, and to be intimately familiar with joy and gratitude. Perhaps there are people who come to mind within your own life who embody this description. Maybe you find yourself wondering, how is it that they live with such fullness and freedom? Well, I bet if you were to ask them that question, they might tell you that they are still figuring it out too. I have yet to meet a person who wakes up every morning totally in love with every part of themselves and every decision they've ever made. That's not typically how this works. None of us will ever reach a point in our lives in which we are complete and without error. In fact, perfection is one of the greatest barriers to an authentic life. Perfection is an external force that pushes us towards who we think we should become and neglects who we are designed to be. I think I should be a doctor, so I overlook my proclivity to teach. I believe I should own a home, so I ignore my innate preference for mobility. I should have six-pack abs, so I must deny my deep and fulfilling connection to carbs, making me an overall less enjoyable person. You get the picture here. This framework of wholeheartedness is found within the Jesuit understanding of vocation, which calls us to be attentive, be reflective, and act with love as we grow and engage with the world around us. But what is involved with the process of becoming more wholehearted? The parts that are less visible to others? Well, it is first and foremost a belief in our innate worth. A dear colleague of mine is known for helping others understand they are from love, of love, and for love. By this, he means that our core essence is birthed from and composed of the purest form of love. Every single part of us, the ways in which we are innately whole and broken, are all from love. This alone makes us divinely worthy of love and belonging. It means we are enough just as we are. And as we embrace this truth, we become better at being for love, toward others and towards ourselves. Knowing we are from love allows us to trust the wisdom and guidance within our own hearts and minds. It comes from a good source, perhaps the greatest source. Listening to this source brings us ever closer to our divine purpose. And this is why all our discernment must begin with the belief that you are loved and worthy. But living in a world that has an endless supply of very narrow messages about success and value, it can be hard to truly trust our divine worth, even when we cognitively know it to be true. This is when we need wholehearted practices. This is the second part of the equation. I've had the distinct pleasure to work with some of the most affirming and empathetic student leaders. They consistently dedicate themselves to showing up and supporting their peers as they make tough transitions to college or seek direction in an uncertain future. When their peers or friends encounter challenges, have missteps, or are feeling lost, these leaders easily offer a compassionate ear to remind them to trust the process. But when they encounter their own flaws and failures, they sometimes forget about their journey. They often get stuck ruminating over their flaws, as if they were to scold themselves enough, their shadows would disappear. Most of us would never speak to our loved ones the way we so readily speak to ourselves. It takes practice to notice the harsh beliefs we hold about ourselves and to nurture kinder, more gentler self-talk. Over time, doing so can lead us to a more holistic understanding of our shadows. Within my own life, I've been sensitive to the fact that I tend to process more slowly than others. It takes me longer to get up after setbacks. And as I get older, I become frustrated with what I perceive to be the time lost to my feelings. If only I didn't need so much time to process change, I might be further along in my career, more settled in my personal life even. Practicing self-compassion reminds me that feeling deeply is a gift that makes me a better friend, partner, and leader. It makes me more creative and fosters a greater tolerance for discomfort than many. To fix or force myself to process more quickly would minimize some of the things that make me distinctly me. We cannot eliminate our shadows without eliminating our light. Actually, it's a bit of a paradox, but when we accept our shadows, they don't demand so much energy. They free us to feed our light. The practice of self-compassion, or positive self-talk, fosters the practice of self-acceptance. And when we can accept our shadows, then knowing that we are from love, of love, and for love becomes easier to believe. It becomes easier to believe all of the pieces of my identities are worth authentic expression. But remember, it's not about perfection. Wholeheartedness is not a destination. It's a process that brings me and you continually closer to acting with authenticity and purpose. And unfortunately, no matter how proficient you become in these practices, there still may be time you cannot show all aspects of your identity or to fully express your wholeness. While I continue my journey to embrace my emotionality, I know there are spaces it is unsafe to share that part of me. As a woman, this part of my identity may be devalued, misunderstood, and maybe even used against me in certain contexts. Discerning when, with whom, and how to show my heart is an act of self-love that honors my innate worth. It is an act of wholeheartedness. It is equally, if not more important, to know the people who can honor and respect your wholeness, your light, and your shadow. Who are the people who can share in your journey? While we are each responsible for our own wholehearted practices, we do not and cannot do it alone. This type of inner work is really hard. It can take a great deal of energy, and some days it may feel like we've hit a wall or just can't muster the strength. That is when we need to turn to our trusted network of loved ones, the people who can serve as witness to our work. When it feels too difficult to speak kindly, allow a friend to share that weight.